Broadcasting from the Red Bed Plains, you are now listening to Through the Prairie Smoke.
I'm gonna pack my pipe over here.
Okay. Already lit this bad boy.
What are you smoking?
Tonight is Romeo. How do you... Okay.
Yeah.
Because you were smoking these before I ever was.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Don't put me on the spot. I don't know how
I call it Romeo Julieta.
Yeah.
But there's a Y in between. So are you...
Romeo E. Julieta.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
And then if we were doing E, would it be Julieta?
Julieta. Yeah. I don't know. It's a Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's that Romeo and Julie guy.
Yeah.
Anyways, 1875. You know what? This is the first cigar I ever smoked in your garage right here. You remember that?
I do remember that. And here it is, full circle.
I think it was a smaller size, but this one's the big boy. It's the bully.
I'm so glad you enjoy it.
Every damn minute of it. Every minute.
So, to go along with our subject matter tonight, I thought my tobacco blend would be a little ridiculous. So I dug around in my pipe bag and found my Mad Fiddler Flake Cornell and Deal. Are you interested in this, the atmosphere?
I'm very intrigued, yes.
The eerie, otherworldly sound of a violin breaches the walls between your rooms. As the Mad Fiddler reaches his crescendo, embers take to your leaf, setting your mixture of Virginia, Casturi, Perique, and Black Cavendish ablaze in the darkness.
Nice.
Based on the H.P. Lovecraft story, The Music of Eric Zahn.
Okay.
Where he rents a top-floor apartment and plays his violin wildly at night. And his neighbors are fed up with it. But one of the neighbors, your narrator, goes out to investigate. And dude is gone, but he looks out his window and it's like outer space. Something like that. There's like a portal through his window. And he was keeping something at bay with his music. That's kind of a spoiler. Yeah, he's missing.
The story's only been out how long?
It's been out for a while.
So if that's a spoiler for...
Yeah, everybody catch up. Well, let's get this thing lit, see what it does.
You know, I tried to find something to kind of theme along with our episode tonight.
Yeah.
On the smoke side.
Mm-hmm.
And the closest thing I could find was my Diesel Desert Walker, because it has the desert look on the label and it has a cowboy. But... It's still in the case right now, and I picked this one out because I looked at it and I was like, that looks delicious, and I'm just gonna go with that one.
Yeah, why not? All right.
How is it? Is it going?
It's going.
All right.
What's our subject tonight? What are we talking about?
Do you like cows?
I do.
I like cows.
I like a big steak.
Yeah. Do you think there's other things out there that like steaks?
Yeah. Likely. We're talking about cattle mutilation tonight.
Yeah.
So it's time to go through the prairie smoke.
It is.
With cattle mutilation.
Why the cows, man? Cows already have it bad enough, you know? They're here to eat and then get slaughtered.
You know, it's something I often think about. We domesticated these critters. Not you and I, but we as humans. So this is their purpose, right? It's not like you can just go out and let all the cows free and everything is fine because they have been domesticated. They're not wild animals anymore. I do recognize that we said this episode is about cattle mutilation, and then both of us laughed.
Yeah.
But
I feel a little bad about it.
For the people that this happens to, it's not all that funny.
Oh, well, yeah. As far as looking at it from that angle, yeah, for sure.
But it's a running joke, you know, cows are getting abducted and stuff like that. It's always funny when something happens to a cow, in popular culture anyway, not in reality. Yeah. I think of, you've seen Me, Myself, and Irene, right?
Yeah.
thinks that cow has been hit on the side of the road, and he tries to put it out of its misery, but it's just awful step after step, and ends up trying to like suffocate it or something. I mean, just ridiculous. And then later in the movie, they're like, you ought to see how he tortured that cow. Poor thing's lucky to be alive. So ridiculous.
It's a great movie too. You know what it reminds me of? Especially when you brought it up and you were like, yeah, let's do an episode on these cow mutilations. I, like everybody else in the world, think UFO popping the cow up off the field. But I also think of it like, it reminds me of those aliens out of Toy Story that are in the claw machine. And they're sitting there and they're like, the claw.
We have been selected.
And that's what the cows are doing. They're all sitting out in the field and they're like, you're the chosen one.
So, I want to say it's the pilot. It's probably not the pilot episode of South Park, but one of the very first episodes of South Park is about alien abduction. And all the cows are getting abducted. And the joke of this is a spoiler for a 25-year-old show.
Sure are ruining some people's night.
The aliens come down and they're communicating with cows by mooing. And they're like, hey, we've discovered that you're the most intelligent species here. The cows are like, why are you cutting us up? It's like, oh, that's Carl. He's new. And you got this guy in the back that's like, moo, moo, moo. Translated like, sorry, my bad. When it comes to cattle mutilation, we're not just talking about cattle that have unexpectedly died. And around here, there's a lot of people who run cattle. And it's usually beef cattle. There are some dairies. But my grandfather ran cattle. So did my uncle. And thinking back to my brother and I hanging out, he counted his cattle every day. So we go over to this place where he's got 13 to 30 cow on an acreage over here. Drive over there, you know. And so some of these people talk about, we don't know how long this cow has been out here. If something like this had happened to my grandfather, he would have known immediately. Yeah. Like, he's doing this every day. I had to check with my dad because every day seems a little excessive, but I don't know.
Like I talk to a lot of farmers that come into my workplace and no, there's some that it's just part of their routine. And a lot of farmers actually, you know, they feed every day, and so that's also probably part of the routine during that because you're gathering them all together. So
right. Oh yeah, when they see your truck, they're like, time to get fed.
Pretty sure what they have invested in these animals. I don't really see farmers being too lazy on that part of it. But.
Yeah, there's different levels of what's going on. It's like, oh, I run cattle on this area here, but it's more to keep the grass in check or something like that, you know. Yeah. So, you know, maybe cattle that just hang out, not necessarily for beef, so there's not as big of an investment in those. And we'll talk about that stuff later. But you weren't excited when I said I wanted to do an episode about this, were you?
Well, you're right, yeah. When you brought it up, I was like, crap. I don't know, other than the pop culture UFO taking a cow. And of course I've heard of it, but I haven't ever, you know, it's just not a subject that I was always like, yeah, hey, I'm going to start reading about these poor cows.
It's a joke. Yeah.
But saying that,
now that you've done your research,
I started researching a little bit and reading some stuff since I wasn't informed very well on it. It got interesting and fun.
It's pretty weird, huh?
Yeah. Not fun for the cows, but fun.
Cattle mutilation stories or animal kidnapping, cattle rustling, none of this stuff is new, you know. There are stories in folklore of livestock being taken. We're going to talk about mostly domestic livestock in America.
Although it has happened in several other countries. And actually, just to tune in for a second, I did see a map. Put little red dots of known cases around the world. Yeah. And South America actually had most of the cases, and United States was like right behind them. Huh. It was interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, in one of our other episodes, I talked about a book called The Crypto Humans Living Underground. That's the wrong title for that book. It's Crypto Terrestrials. But that's the thing. It's another one of those things where as we talk about that stuff, it's like, well, it couldn't be anything else but aliens. Well, we don't have any evidence of that. You know, it could also be these people that live underground in the national parks.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah, that's why we were looking up at that spaceship throwing anchors at us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there was a really big thing that kicked off in the 70s here in America. Like, people started flipping out about these cattle mutilations. The FBI got involved and stuff like that. But if anybody thinks, oh, that stuff got started in the 70s, I've got a little excerpt from a book I'd like to read you here.
I'm glad I didn't cut you off like I normally do and waited for you to finish that sentence, because while you were saying it, you said, I have a little, and he grabs, for you listeners out there, he grabs this book that has to be like 12 inches thick off the table, and it was like, oh, little.
Yeah, I'm going to read this whole thing tonight. No, it's over 1,000 pages, and this is the collected works of Charles Fort. It includes 4 complete volumes: The Book of the Dam, New Lands, Low, and Wild Talents.
I believe it.
Have we talked about Charles Fort before? A little bit of background, just in case. This dude was trying to be a writer and spent a lot of time in libraries and just started collecting weird news stories, news articles, folklores, things like that, and compiled them. And eventually this guy got this idea that we are property, human beings are property. This is some intergalactic base or something where we as livestock are kept. So it got a little wild out there. But
that's a good theory.
Nobody's tending this livestock very well, it looks like. But anyway,
are they?
Or are they? Are we doing exactly what we're supposed to?
Tyler, you're the chosen one.
I'm just glad you wanted me. Have you ever seen the movie Under the Skin? She's a space alien picking up drifters.
Okay, no.
Okay.
You lost me.
It's based on a book, and in the book, these are like bug creatures that live underground, but they come to Earth to harvest humans, to fatten up and slaughter, and then send back home. It's like the humans are called Vodsel. The movie doesn't get into that. The movie is beautiful and mostly images. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's harvesting humans. Okay, so this book in particular is from Wild Talents. Cut me off if this gets boring, I guess. It's just about a page.
Okay.
It may be that there are vampires other than vampire bats. I have wondered at the specialization of appetite in the traditional stories of vampires. If blood be desired, why not the blood of cattle and sheep? According to many stories, there have been unexplained attacks upon human beings. Also, there have been countless outrages upon other animals. Possibly the remote ancestors of human beings were apes, though no evolutionist has made clear to me the reasons for doubting the equally plausible theory that apes have either ascended or descended from humans. Still, I think that humans may be evolved from apes because the simians openly imitate humans as if conscious of a higher state, whereas the humans who act like apes are likely to deny it when criticized. Slashers and rippers of cattle may be throwbacks to the ape era. But though it is said that in the Kenya colony, Africa, baboons sometimes mutilate cattle, I'd not say that the case against them has been made out. London Daily Mail, May 18th, 1925, that for some years an alarming epidemic of sheep slashing and cattle ripping has been breaking out in the month of April on Kenya stock ranches. Natives were blamed, but then it was learned that their cattle too had been attacked. Then it was said to be proved that baboons were the marauders. Possibly the baboons too were unjustly blamed. Then what? The wounds were long, deep cuts, as if vicious slashes with a knife, but it was explained that baboons kill by ripping with their thumbnails. The most widely known case of cattle mutilation is that in which was involved a young lawyer, George Adalji, son of a Hindu who was a clergyman in the village of Wirely, Staffordshire, England. Wirely? It don't matter. The first of outrages occurred upon the night of February 2nd, 1903. A valuable horse was ripped.
He left it at that.
Then at intervals up to August 27th, there were mutilations of horses, cows, and sheep. Suspicion was directed to Adalji because of anonymous letters accusing him. After the mutilation of a horse, August 27th, Adalji was arrested. The police searched his house and, according to them, found an old coat upon which were bloodstains. In the presence of Adalji's parents and his sister, the police said that there were horse hairs upon his coat. The coat was taken to the police station where Dr. Butler, the police surgeon, examined it. Reporting upon it, he had found 29 horse hairs. The police said that the shoes worn by Adalji exactly fitted tracks in the field where the horse had been mutilated. They learned that the young man had been away from home that night, taking a walk, as told by him. The case against Adalji convinced a jury, which found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 7 years penal servitude.
Oh, man.
And then he has a critique on the justice system here.
Don't we all?
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. At some point, the government appointed a committee to investigate, and the report of this committee was that Adalji had been wrongfully convicted. Sometimes slashers of cattle have been caught, and when called upon to explain, have said that they obeyed an irresistible impulse. The better educated of these unresisting ones transform the rude word slasher into vivisectionist, and instead of sneaking into fields at night, work at regular hours in their laboratories. There are persons who wonder at the state of mind of people in general, back in times when torture of humans was sanctioned. The guts of a man were dragged out for the glory of God. According to reconsideration by the English government in the Adalji case, the slasher of cattle of Wirely remain uncaught. In the summer of 1907, in the same region, again, there was slashing. August 22nd, 1907, a horse mutilated. It was said that blood had been found on the horns of a cow and that the horse had been gored. 5 nights later, 2 horses in another field were slashed so that they died. September 8th, horse slashed at Breenwood, Staffordshire. A young butcher named Morgan was accused, but he was able to show that he had been in his home at the time. For about a month, injuries to horses continued to be reported. They had been injured by barbed wires or by nails projecting from fences. So, early 1900s.
Yep. How about the story that goes further back?
In some of our previous podcasts, I think I've talked about the airship craze that was happening in the late 1800s in the U.S. People were seeing airships all over the place, dropping anchors, weird stuff. They were always broken down. But there is a fella who talks about seeing an airship. And oddly enough, his name is Alexander Hamilton.
Not the father of our country.
No. And this was April 23rd, 1897. And this was in Kansas. And supposedly, this fella and his family see this giant cigar-shaped thing, which they assume to be an airship because everybody all over the U.S. is seeing airships. And it's got these bright lights that are shining down. And they call it like electric arc lights. Extremely bright. And they're looking at these cattle, and he's got a calf that's stuck in a fence. Its head is stuck in a fence. And it seems like the beam is on that cow, and there is a line running from that cow back to this airship. And he also talks about seeing critters underneath this airship on this little platform. But anyway, they go out to cut the fence wire to release the cow, and when they do that, the calf and the ship just rise up and go away. Like the
prize calf.
Yeah, the spaceship.
There he goes.
The alien cowboys came in and lassoed a cow and hauled it up to their ship.
It's interesting because his account, when he's describing what's around the calf, he says it's a slip knot around the cow, but he doesn't know what it is. But he does say it's like a slip knot around it. And it's like we talked, it's interesting that like from a perspective of somebody that, from that time, it's going to be a rope or something that's coming down. And now it's like you ask somebody on the street about UFO and cows, and they just think about the beam.
Yeah, they're levitating.
Beam me up, Scotty. Yeah. So this is interesting.
Now, it is worth pointing out that 80 years later, an elderly woman said, I overheard my grandma talking to him, and he was bragging about how he made that whole story up.
Oh, yeah, because he was part of a, what do they call it, the Big Liar Gang?
A liar's club.
A liar's club, yeah.
And they just make up these ridiculous stories. Sounds fun. Sounds like a good time.
Yep. Dude, he said that cigar-shaped object was 300 feet long. When I was reading it, all I saw was the word cigar, and I was like, oh, man, I wish I had a cigar right now.
Yeah. What would it take to cut a cigar that long, you think?
Oh, man, how long would it take to smoke it? That's what I was thinking. Is that the earliest story that you've come across?
That's one that is cited often. It comes up all the time in the things I'm into.
I thought it was a cool story.
It's a fun story, yeah.
Then it takes me back to Cowboys and Aliens,
man,
the movie. You know,
that movie is so great for a lot of different reasons. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah.
Like we briefly mentioned earlier, the 1970s were this was the big heyday. That is really when it was in the public awareness. And it was happening so often in, I want to say it was Nebraska. I've got the files here in front of me, and I'll look through them here in a minute. Mm-hmm. But these local cattle ranchers were like reaching out to their state senator, and they're like, can you get someone to come and look into this? Because this is real weird. And so essentially there is a senator in Colorado, and he requests FBI assistance. And it's interesting because this goes back and forth a lot. So I've got, and you can get this, my contact at the FBI gave me these files.
Yeah. Yep, he did.
That would be you.
Oh, well, I was there. See,
you can find these online if you go to FBI's the FBI's website. They have a database, and they've got this section on.
I don't know, Tyler. I had one of those little keys, you know, little fancy little internet keys, and I was like, let me in.
If you go to an alphabetical search of their archive files, like cattle mutilation is like number 6, just alphabetical. Yeah. And I want to say it's like 5 different batches of documents, and some of them are magazine clippings and newspaper clippings that have been shared back and forth. So some of them repeat a little bit, but also it's copies, and it's copies of stuff that have been copied several times. So some of it's not real readable, but there is some fascinating stuff in here. It's real interesting.
It is.
So I'm going to read a letter here. This is to the Honorable Carl T. Curtis, United States Senate, and this is dated September 10th, 1974. This is to acknowledge receipt of your letter of September 4th with enclosure concerning the recent maiming and killing of cattle in several Nebraska communities. On August 23rd, I answered your letter of August 21st and indicated I was having a representative of our Omaha office contact Mr. George Hitchcock of Stewart, Nebraska, to determine whether the facts constituted a possible violation of law within the investigative jurisdiction of the FBI. I have just received communication from our Omaha office which sets forth the results of interview with Mr. Hitchcock and Charles Fox, Sheriff of Holt County, Nebraska. Based on the information furnished by these individuals, it appears that no federal law within the investigative jurisdiction of the FBI has been violated, inasmuch as there is no indication of interstate transportation of the maimed or killed animals. I am informed that this matter is currently under investigation by the Nebraska State Patrol and law enforcement officers in the counties involved. And that is Clarence M. Kelly, Director, is who sent that. So, the FBI is like, we don't just come and look into weird stuff. A law needs to have been broken that we have jurisdiction over, you know.
Yeah, sir, you got the wrong number. You need the number to Men in Black.
Yeah.
Somebody get Will Smith on the phone.
Okay, so this is the letter that he was referencing. This is to Clarence M. Kelly, Director of the FBI. Dear Mr. Kelly, this will refer to my previous letter of August 21st to you regarding the series of incidents stretching from Oklahoma to Nebraska in which cattle have been dismembered in some kind of strange witchcraft cult. Enclosed is a newspaper article which appeared in the Hastings, Nebraska Daily Tribune concerning these weird events. Articles similar to this one have appeared in many of the Nebraska newspapers. I thought you would want to see this article in order to substantiate the claims which have been made. I am wondering if your good offices have instigated an investigation into the situation either in Nebraska or any other states experiencing similar acts of mutilation to livestock. I will appreciate hearing from you. Thanking you, I am. Sincerely yours, Carl T. Curtis. And the article that he attaches to this letter is mutilated livestock, helicopters, and UFO source of wonder/worry. And there's this that says, are UFO sightings and mutilations related? And so immediately, like, this is where everybody's minds are going, you know. Witchcraft, UFOs, things like that. Government. This is to the director of the FBI, attention FBI laboratory. The subject is mutilation of animals, Minnesota, North and South Dakota research matter. For the information of the Bureau, animals, mostly livestock, have been reported as mutilated in the 3-state area of this division and parts of their bodies missing. The parts listed as missing have been the sexual organs, ears, lips, and udders, and in some instances the blood from the animals was considered completely drained. No evidence of value ever located at the scene. State veterinarians, after examination of mutilated animal carcasses, contend dead animals were eaten by other animals or varmints, believed to be foxes, due to their sharp side teeth, which were described as shearing teeth like scissors. So, let's consider this. You are a vet who, for some reason, some state organization is like, hey, look at this, what do you think? Looks at it and is like, well, it's a dead cow. Where'd you find it? Well, something made it. It's been out there for a while, you know? Because what else are you going to think?
Yeah.
But when you get on site, things don't really match up with that.
It's a lot different when it's in its original placement.
I've got some interesting notes on that. They all read the same. It's like, well, this is the same thing.
Yeah.
That part that I just read about shearing teeth like foxes, there is a letter from the director of the FBI back to SAC, Minneapolis. Let's see here. The circumstances set forth in referenced airtel were discussed with Dr. Don Wilson, Chief Mammalogy Section, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Washington, D.C. Dr. Wilson said that the circumstances set forth in referenced airtel were consistent with natural phenomenon. According to Dr. Wilson, when small mammals, such as foxes and possums, feed on the carcasses of large mammals, such as cattle, that have not decayed, they first feed on soft tissues, such as the nose, lips, udders, and genital areas. He said that it has been frequently observed that genital areas is most often the first soft tissue to be attacked. Dr. Wilson had no information concerning the specific appearances of tissue bitten by foxes.
Well, it's interesting that they keep mentioning foxes and then now a possum. And those are just two animals that aren't even on my radar when I start thinking of predators that eat cow carcasses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's when we live in the plains and we live around a bunch of cattle. Mm-hmm. And what is our common prey, our predator around here? It's coyotes.
Yeah.
And
dogs.
Maybe a mountain lion every once in a while. Mm-hmm. Very rare.
Yeah.
Even if you're in another state that maybe has black bears, maybe a bear,
Yeah.
But I don't ever think about foxes or possums for sure.
Yeah.
And then, of course, birds.
Of course.
You know.
Okay. There is an article attached to that. Let me read to you a newspaper article from the editors of this newspaper. And then I've got an FBI response to that. This is an article from the Denver Post that was published on September 3rd, 1975. Cattle deaths and the FBI. If the FBI will not enter the investigation of mysterious livestock deaths in Colorado and some adjacent states, then Senator Floyd Haskell, is that right? Yeah. Senator Floyd Haskell Colorado, should take the matter to Congress for resolution. The incidents are too widespread and potentially too dangerous to public order to ignore. Narrow interpretation of what the FBI's role is vis-a-vis state authority are not adequate to the need. There is already federal involvement. Consider this. Because of the gun-happy frame of mind developing in eastern Colorado, where most of the incidents have been occurring, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management has had to cancel a helicopter inventory of its lands in 6 counties. BLM officials are simply afraid their helicopters might be shot down by ranchers and others frightened by cattle death. If that isn't a reason for federal involvement, we don't know what is. And the question of which federal agency investigates isn't as important as the need to bring a focus on the incidents that is broader than the jurisdiction of one state. Killings and mutilations of livestock have been occurring in Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, and elsewhere, not just in Colorado. If there is a pattern to the incidents, it would seem that the broadest possible study of them is indicated. In any case, Senator Haskell should keep the pressure on the FBI. It has manpower and a wide range of investigative tools. And if the FBI resists successfully, the senator should go to Congress to get the sort of attention these alarming incidents deserve. This is great. I enjoy this a lot. Okay. This is to the director of the FBI from SAC Denver. Subject, mutilation of livestock, state of Colorado, information concerning. Enclosed herewith is a copy of the editorial appearing in the Denver Post relating to Senator Floyd Haskell's request that the FBI entered captioned investigation. On the morning of September 4th, 1975, S.A. Donald J. Sebesta, media relations representative, and I visited with the editorial staff of the Denver Post concerning the article. We met with Charles R. Buxton, Executive Vice President, Editor and Publisher, Robert Partridge, Editor of the editorial page, and Lee Olson, editorial page writer and writer of the enclosed article, and explained to them the manner in which this bureau enters investigations, stressing the point that unless the FBI has investigative jurisdiction under federal statute, we cannot enter any investigation. It was pointed out to these individuals that if the FBI were to enter an investigation merely because someone felt we should, we would soon be categorized as a national police force. The limitations placed on the Bureau by Congress and the Department of Justice are well defined, and it was pointed out that the FBI would always operate within the scope of its investigative jurisdiction and departmental guidelines. These individuals were most receptive to the visit, indicating that they had a better understanding of the FBI's jurisdiction as a result of this meeting and expressed sincere appreciation for the visit from this office. It is believed that this meeting was extremely beneficial both to the representatives of the Denver Post and to this office, since it gave me a good reason not only to meet them personally, but to discuss matters of mutual interest. At the conclusion of this meeting, an invitation was extended to these individuals to visit the Denver FBI office at any time, which they readily accepted. The above is being submitted for the information of the Bureau, since it appears there will continue to be press interest in Senator Haskell's request that the FBI enter the livestock mutilation case. So, this senator kept trying to get them involved. And it's like, there's nothing for us to get involved about here. We can't do it. This document here is memorandum to Mr. Adams. Senator Haskell recontacted me this afternoon and said that he had received a call from Dan Edwards, editor of the paper in Brush, Colorado, who furnished information that U.S. Army helicopters had been seen in the vicinity of where some of the cattle were mutilated, and that he, Edwards, had been threatened, but Senator Haskell did not know what sort of threats Edward had received or by whom. So here we get into a little bit of the conspiracy part as well, where people are under the impression it may be the government itself doing these types of things. What do you think about all that?
Pretty crazy. There's definitely a long list of theories.
So the letter from the senator pretty much outlines what's normally taken. Soft tissue like the tongue, usually removed, genitals, rectum.
Yep.
Ears.
Eyes. Or at least one eye.
What do you do with those parts? Is that good eating? Not for us, anyway.
Nah. If it is aliens, do you think they're making like a world famous chili?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It has to be.
You think that's what they're doing? They just take these parts, they're experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that years to come, there's going to be like a universal galaxy cook-off.
Using earth-born domestic beef.
Yep.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Yep.
No beans, though, right?
No, keep the beans out of it.
Keep the beans.
I'm okay with it. Some people aren't, but I think if it's going to be a worldwide thing, let's keep it like kind of a even playing field, and let's leave out the beans just as a technicality. Oh man.
Somebody sent the director of the FBI an article that was in We magazine, the September 1976 issue. Do you know what We magazine is?
No, but I know what a we is.
OUI.
Oh.
A wait. Wait. It was like Playboy. In fact, I think it was the editors of Playboy published this We magazine as well.
Wow.
So the senator totally got this porn in the mail, but in that porn was this article about cattle mutilation. It's not porn, it's artistic expression. And it was only sent to him for this article, okay?
Yeah.
The title
so either that was to grab his attention.
Uh-huh.
Or how can that be taken serious?
I know.
When it comes in that, but if it was put there in that to get his attention, then yeah.
So you've heard me talk about John Keel, and I love John Keel stuff. Being a writer, was hired to do a UFO report for Playboy. Probably about this time. It may have been late 60s. He went out to do this UFO stuff thinking about it's just going to be crazy and talking to crazy people. And of course he did talk to crazy people, but not all of them were crazy. And it changed his view on this stuff. The first time I heard the story about the airship lassoing the cow, I'm sure I heard that somewhere from John Keel's stuff. But I was able to find a used We magazine, September 1976, and I ordered it. So,
oh yeah,
yeah, I'll get to share. I'll get to share with you this.
I can't wait to see it.
Ridiculous adult magazine.
It's for the articles, people.
It is. It's for this article in particular. This is 11 pages of cattle mutilation stuff in this adult gentleman's magazine. Okay.
Yeah.
Very.
Well, I always heard the articles are really good.
Of course.
But I just couldn't get past the pictures.
Yeah. Distraction, man. All the information's out there, man. You just got to know where to look, and then have the focus to keep looking.
Wait, is that a situation where the people underground want us to look up? So now they want us to look at the pictures
and not the articles,
and don't worry about the articles.
It's hard to take any of this seriously when they're so good at their job. No. It is kind of hard when it's in a material like that. Okay, so that was essentially what was in batch 1 of the FBI stuff. Here is a letter to Honorable Harrison H. Schmidt, United States Senate, and it's from Griffin B. Bell. He is the Attorney General at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. This is January 10th, 1979. Dear Senator Schmidt, as I told you over the telephone yesterday, I have asked Philip Heyman, head of the Criminal Division, to look into our jurisdiction over the cattle mutilation problem with which you are concerned. He will be in touch with you at an early date. I must say that the materials sent me indicate the existence of one of the strangest phenomenon in my memory. Warm regards, Griffin B. Bell. And he is responding to this letter that Harrison Schmidt sent him on December 21st, 1978. Dear Mr. Attorney General, during the past several years, ranchers throughout the West, including my home state of New Mexico, have been victimized by a series of cattle mutilations. As a result, these ranchers have, as a group and individually, suffered serious economic losses. These mysterious killings have been the subject of at least 2 articles in national publications, copies of which are enclosed. Mr. Cockburn's article in the December 1975 issue of Esquire states that there had been a federal investigation into this matter, but it was dropped. Mr. Cockburn implies that the investigation may have been terminated because cattle mutilation per se is not a federal offense. And then there's a lot of other copies and stuff that were included on this. And the Attorney General was like, well, that's weird. Cockburn's article here. It's under the crime section. The title, Rippers of the Range. So hearkening back to...
That's actually a fantastic title.
Yeah. And harkens back to Charles Fort's stuff from, So...
That horse is ripped.
Means something different now. Where's he work out?
Gold gym.
Okay. So here is a small part of his article. Over the past couple of years, hundreds of such mutilations have occurred in Colorado, Minnesota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, South Dakota, Montana, New Mexico, and Texas. In fact, if you follow this kind of thing, you may have noticed the odd item in the newspapers about the cattle cutting craze. I'd seen such items myself, but not taken too much of an interest until my good friend Ed Sanders told me last fall that some anonymous person in Sacramento had sent him a cow's tongue in the mail. Now, Sanders is the author of The Family, a fine and eerie book about the Manson Group. Like myself, he has taken only a passing interest in cattle mutilations. The arrival in June of what he likes to call the lingua bovina excisa, packed in a shoebox at the office of his literary agent, escalated his attention remarkably.
I imagine it did.
Let's see here. Back in 1970, when Sanders was compiling material about the Manson Group, ritual murders, and other diverting practices in California, he'd examined the case of a ritual decapitation of a goat in Topanga Canyon. 5 years later, the question seemed to be whether excised animal parts had, so to speak, become part of the currency of satanic groups. Whether a sliced cow's tongue was now an essential part of the ritualist's working equipment. The part that I wanted to share, and some of this stuff can get kind of graphic. So far, after some investigation, Sanders has found nothing to connect the tongue from Sacramento with the mutilations in the Midwest. But he did, in the course of a drive across the country, find himself standing in the office of the sheriff of Elbert County, Colorado, looking at a Polaroid photograph. It showed a cow with its udder bag and rectum removed. The cow had been pregnant, and the photograph also showed a long, thin, unborn calf's neck and head, which the mutilators had cut and pulled out of its mother's uterus. The calf's tongue had been cut out. As Sanders later remarked to me, he could understand why ranchers were getting upset. You think?
Yeah.
And then he goes on about how depressing the mutilation findings are. Like just people finding their valuables. They are commodity, and they're just destroyed.
Their livelihood?
Yeah.
In most cases.
This is not related to cattle mutilation, but there is a little poem underneath this article here.
Okay.
And I've got a little WTF penciled next to it, and I'd like to read this to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, then that means it's good.
It's titled Widow Price. Oscar Price died with a hunk of steak in his throat, dining among friends at Top of 21, a restaurant for people on top of it all. His friends thought him laughing, then mildly miffed, red-faced at his wife, who salted her potato and missed his going. Where she lives now, on top of a hill, she wonders about choking. This is on days when rocks shift place and daisies are spineless with west wind at their backs. She watches birds, how flycatchers take food and are gone. It is frightening, all this shifting and bending and flying. The thing about choking, too. She misses Oscar, she says. What in the heck?
What? The WTF.
Unrelated to cattle mutilation as far as I go, but he choked on a steak, so it's kind of related.
I'll tell you what, the next time that I'm having a steak dinner
and
I'm chewing on a piece of steak, if I look over and Amber's salting the potato, Oh, dude.
You're going to be so red-faced.
Oh, yeah. And then I want you to read this at my funeral.
Amber eat potatoes.
That's pretty funny. Not now.
Uh-huh.
Nope. I'm going to call her after this episode.
Probably for the best.
Yep.
What'd you do with my pipe? Oh,
I'm over here, man. You got more to read?
Mm-hmm.
Man, you got like a little steam train over there, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Are you liking it?
I am. For some reason, I don't think I liked this tobacco before, but it's fine now. It must be the subject matter. Better company,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah, it pairs with it.
Yeah.
It pairs with cow mutilation.
Yeah, I think so. So, in these FBI files, there's an article about material found after a UFO sighting in a cattle mutilation area near Taos. Cattle mutilation mystery deepens. Mutilated cow is discovered in Dulce area. 4 mutilated cows found near Dulce. The U.S. Senator for New Mexico, Honorable Harrison Schmidt, he reaches out to Dulce, New Mexico for a government investigation of the mysterious livestock mutilations that have plagued Rio Arriba County for the past 2 years. And he's attached the official New Mexico State Police offense incident reports. And it's interesting because you look at these early reports and it's just like date, owner, animal description, date died, position found in, organs taken, track evidence, and who the inspector is. And on some of these, I will read all of some of these, but for most of them, I'm just going to give you bits and pieces. So it's funny because this first one here, date, August 1975. It's not very specific. We've got owners, animal description, calf. Position found in, we don't have anything. Organs taken, vulva, udders, terminal colon. Track evidence, none. Next one, September 9th, 1975. Animal description, bull, Hereford. Position found in, on right side. Organs taken, scrotum, penis, rectum. Track evidence, wet ground, and an elbow imprint was found. Elbow.
Yeah.
October 4th, 1975. Animal description, bull. Organs taken, tongue cut out, half of left ear cut off, testicles, penis, and rectum had been removed. Track evidence. There was hair on logs and brush. Also, several trees about 3 inches in diameter had been broken down where it appeared he had been down prior to his death. October 11th, 1975. This is Springer, New Mexico. Animal description, cow. Organs taken, left eye picked out. The bag had been cut out, including some hide around it. That was all that was taken. Track evidence, none stated. Hereford bull, 3 years. Right side, scrotum, penis, rectum, taken. No tracks. October 13th, New Mexico. Scrotum, testicles, penis, and end of sheath, taken.
Oh, man.
Track evidence, only those made by the people who investigated, listed by name. October 15th, track evidence, none stated. October 18th, organs taken, rectum and vagina, track evidence, none noted. I've got pages of this stuff, and there are 4 of these per page. On this 5th page here, we've got January, I'm going to guess that's 19th, maybe 1976 in New Mexico. Animal description, black motley face. Date died December 26, 1975. Position found in left side. Most of them have been on the right side so far. Organs taken. Cut all of the rectum, udder, 2 holes on jugular vein on right side hole in between front legs, a little something, which look like they might want to get to the heart. 2 holes on back in front of hip bones, same size as the ones in neck, 1 to each side of the spine, right across. It looked like they were made from the air while the cow was standing up. All sexual organs and udder were taken. So this is one that was like really detailed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Track evidence, none except for bird tracks.
Yeah. Nothing about big chickens either.
No big chickens. No human-sized chickens. Track evidence. Nothing except for bird tracks. Wild. January 19th. This is in the same place. Different owner. 2 days later. Position found in left side. Organs taken. All sexual organs and tongue. Then we go to February 14th. A different place. A 700-pound heifer. Organs taken. Udder. Track evidence. It rained the night before, so no tracks. April 23rd. This is a horse that was found lying on her back. Says bag area and rectum area. Track evidence on this one. Numerous track of coyotes or dog in evidence. June 29th, 1976. This is a yearling steer. Position found in left side. Organs taken. Right ear and right eye. The tongue. Circle cut out at his navel. Penis was gone, and he had also been cut around his rectum. July 10th, 1976. This doesn't say where it was. Organs taken. Tongue, testicles, and penis. Cut at the rectum. Also gone was large intestine. Track evidence. In track evidence, it says, a white helicopter was seen morning of July 8th.
How's that track? What?
No.
You got the foot pads or something?
Here is what we're getting into with this stuff.
It's such a simple form.
Yeah.
To keep everything,
Of course.
Uniformed.
Uh-huh. If you got somebody like me filling out one of these reports, it's going to go on forever. Details are important.
One thing I've taken away from it, though, sounds like somebody was having a hell of a calf fry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There is one here that is handwritten. No track evidence. Pictures in possession of owner. So there are pictures taken.
That one, you say it was handwritten, so the other ones were typed?
Yeah. Here's another one where the form was just filled out by hand. Animal last seen on July 5th, and it was found the next morning, had been mutilated on the night of the 5th. Areas mutilated is what this form says. Rectal area, penis and testicles were removed from animal, tongue was also gone. Track evidence, only tracks were those of birds. Distance from public road or residence, 137 steps from a public road, about 250 yards from residence. And then it's like, oh, this is like a tax form all of a sudden. There is a whole lot of information. These are long, typed out forms. Here is an excerpt from a letter that Gabrielle L. Valdez, the New Mexico State Police, had supplied. Ryder has conducted an intensive investigation into approximately 23 cattle mutilations, which have been reported in the state of New Mexico within the last 16 months. They all carry the same pattern. Also during this investigation, Ryder has been unable to determine that on one of the mutilated cows, which occurred in New Mexico, high dosage of atropine insecticide was analyzed in the blood system. This substance is a tranquilizing drug. The Los Alamos Scientific Research Laboratory has conducted a necropsy on several animals, including a buffalo, which revealed that the animal had been highly infected with blackleg. Investigation has also revealed that on all cattle mutilations which have occurred in New Mexico and surrounding states, that the object of the mutilations has been the lymph node system. And then more of these professional forms, but they have been photocopied so much that they are hard to read. It's real hard to read, but here's another one of my WTF moments reading some of these reports. Like I said at the beginning, these reports were real small. 4 of them were fitting on a page, and they were just real simple. Well, now we've got incident type. We've got event, victim, subject, vehicle, narrative, how much criminal damage amount. This one in particular that I'm looking at was $400 in damages. This is Dulce, New Mexico. Incident date on June 14th, 1978. They were contacted because the victim had a 4-year-old Hereford cow that they found. It was laying on its right side with tongue and sex organs precisely removed. Pinkish blood from her nose was visible, and looks like there was an abrasion on the left front leg, and the rear left leg was broken. Marks were visible on the lower left leg, perhaps where a claw or vise had been fastened. No imprints or tracks were found around the animal. And then it goes on. It's hard to read. There's something about samples of a fluorescent substance, and they got those and they were sent to a lab. But this report concludes that whoever is responsible for these mutilations is operating out of a well-undercover truck van, which is heavily guarded. This van supposedly carries the craft, which operates within a 40-mile radius. This makes it rather difficult for investigating officers to personally witness or find clues to these mutilation area where the mutilations occur. It's so hard to read, but this is a report that's essentially saying there's a big van that goes out there, sets a craft off that can operate within a 40-mile radius, picks up a cow and brings it back to the van for processing. And then the craft would take it back to where it found it and drop it.
Wow. I don't even think we have drones that can do that.
No, of course not. June 14th, 1978. Steer mutilation. July 29th, 1979. Torrance County, New Mexico. Odell said the steer's scrotum and penis had been removed with surgical precision, a feature common to all previous mutilations, and indicated that patches of hair around the carcass seemed to indicate that the steer had been dropped or bounced, another feature common to all previous mutilations. The steer's intestines had been removed through the hole where the scrotum had been cut out, but were not disturbed. Odell felt that an animal would have gone directly to the intestines. The steer's tongue was not removed, as in previous mutilations, but the insides of the ears seemed to have been beveled out with a sharp instrument. This letter in the bottom also mentions that, in response to your question about whether any mutilations have occurred on federal land, Officer Valdez informs me that 8 mutilations were discovered in the Jacarillo Apache Reservation, and 7 on the Santa Clara Pueblo Reservation. There have been a total of 69 cattle mutilations and 6 horse mutilations reported in New Mexico since 1975. That's been 4 years. 45 of the cattle mutilations and 4 of the horse mutilations occurred in 1978. With that letter, this is where the FBI can get involved. The report that some of the mutilations have occurred in Indian country is our first indication that federal law may have been violated. So here is when the FBI officially gets involved, because it happened on land that has federal oversight. We haven't really talked about what is found, but the people, these ranchers, they've been doing this for a long time, you know. Mm-hmm. And the expectation is if they come across a dead animal, they're going to have a pretty good idea of what happened, you know.
Usually, yep.
If you're checking on your cattle frequently, you're looking for the sick ones. You don't want to lose your investment, you know.
Yep. Which is hard to do sometimes.
Of course.
Because I thought it was an interesting fact that I heard the other day. They're herbivores, and one of their defense mechanisms would be, you know, predators go after the weak ones.
Right.
And they don't want to show weakness. They don't want to show that they're hurt. That could get them eaten. Mm-hmm. The thing I heard the other day was that their pain tolerance is they can take a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And not show it.
Yeah.
So, but you know, these ranchers and farmers, I mean, I'm sure they've been doing it for years. I'm sure they know. But to a common predator, maybe a coyote or something like that, they're not going to see some of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things too. You'd think in their experience, if they'd ever had an animal attacked by a pack of dogs or coyotes or something, they know what that looks like.
Yeah, because I'm sure they've seen it.
And that's something, it happens around here occasionally where coyotes will come and chew off an ear but not kill the goat, you know?
Yeah. Well, that one case that you mentioned, they were talking about, it looked like chunks out of like the top.
Yeah.
When I was talking to one of my friends the other day about this subject, the theory of them maybe being picked up and dropped, he was trying his best. Like, we weren't having an argument, but I was telling him the stuff that is weird in these cases. He was like stuck on the predator
Yeah.
And I kept bringing up these scenarios just because it was funny, because he was getting really into the conversation. And he was getting really animated.
Yeah.
And when I brought up the whole, being dropped, there's broken bones and stuff like that. And he was like, mountain lions, Dustin, mountain lions. Mountain lions can jump on them. And that's how they take them down.
Sure.
And so when you said that one case, his voice was in the back of my head, and it was like, mountain lions, Dustin. Mountain lions.
It marked him while he was standing up because it leapt on his back.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that report of like a van, some object that can operate in a 40-mile radius and stuff.
That's
like
crazy, yeah.
The coyotes are operating that van, they're...
Oh, man, we just stepped into the Looney Tune world.
The most absurd
Man,
thing
O'Reilly,
possible.
he stepped it up.
Branded Acme on the sign.
Yeah.
So this is all stuff from the 70s. And then we get into the 80s, and everybody's like, this is a cult. They're using these for ritual sacrifice.
Satanic panic.
Yeah, it leads right into the satanic panic. And someday we'll have to do an episode on the satanic panic. Here's another article I want to read you. I don't have any info on where this came from. But anyway, FBI gets involved, and this article included in these FBI files says, Mutilations Probe Disappointing. Examination of the first quarterly report submitted in our famous $50,000 cattle mutilation probe would indicate results to date can be described as best disappointing. The worst might be to suggest it's a waste of the taxpayers' money. In summary, Chief Investigator Kim Rommel, at a salary of $25,000 a year, gave interviews to television stations and newspapers, talked with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, confirmed support from a number of state agencies, which he had already, and checked out 3 suspected mutilations in his first 5 weeks on the job. That cost about $2,500 in salary plus unknown expenses. The report says that the investigations into the 3 cattle deaths were not complete, although one Albuquerque newspaper quoted Rommel as saying all 3 were caused by predators. But lo and behold, a mutilation reported Saturday morning, only several hours after the animal's death, and probably the freshest incident to date, had yet to be checked out by 4 p.m. Tuesday, more than 4 days later. Our desert fox hadn't made it out there. The state police hadn't responded, the livestock inspector was not to be seen, and the only explanation to our direct attorney, he's the one who got the $50,000 grant, had said it was the weekend. We must advise all cattle mutilators that the game is played only 5 days a week. We rest on the weekends. Now, fellows, there is a tremendous amount of interest in this subject as evidenced by the turnout for the Albuquerque conference conducted by New Mexico Senator Harrison Schmitt. Additional proof is the fact that the feds coughed up $50,000 to look into it. While the public can't expect a solution in the first 6 weeks of activity, for Pete's sake, they can expect more than a skimpy one-page report issued last week, and they can expect, for the money they are putting up, for someone to show up to investigate reported mutilations. But, as one optimist remarked cheerfully, look at it this way. It's only $50,000. It could have been $500,000.
Jeez. That's an expensive piece of paper.
Yeah. So this kind of goes into like, why aren't we hearing about this stuff? Why don't they disclose what they know? And I really think it comes back to because we don't know anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
We can't figure it out.
Well, it's also annoying. We've heard this many times too. And not just in mutilation cases, but we don't want to cause a panic.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Like, people are already getting ready to shoot down your helicopters.
Yeah.
Like, people are already panicking.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because in some of the documentaries and news reports and stuff like that, since you threw me on this old train with you, but it was interesting that in several different cases, it was almost like a broken record. Mm-hmm. The local law enforcement would look into it, or a local veterinarian would look into it, and they would all go back to predator.
Yeah.
And then
because what
they
else
would
could it
always
be?
follow it up with, listen, we don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
We assume it's a predator.
Right.
But we don't want to cause panic.
Yeah.
So I thought that it was so irritating. So I can understand these people's frustration.
Yeah.
And, these people, they're not looking for these people to come out and say, yeah, it's aliens.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, it's a monster that lives in the forest.
Yeah.
They just want a simple, like, answer and a solution, because this is their money.
Yeah, well, that's the predator conversation as well. You know, like, of course it's predators. What else would it be? Insure your livestock. I don't know. Okay, so that was all 70s up into early 80s. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that the FBI has after that. I think
they bowed out.
Yeah, you know, their jurisdiction was on federal lands, and I suspect the residents of the reservations probably didn't want government officials hanging out too much. Didn't really have a lot to say to them.
Yeah,
just an assumption.
Yep. Although we've been kind of talking, we haven't really talked about the different scenarios that people have come up with for answers to who's killing these cows.
Right. So obviously people have talked about aliens. That's the pop culture joke. They're getting abducted by aliens, and they're taking these parts for who knows what reason.
Yeah.
The whole thing about it being a cult, some sort of sacrificial ritual, I think the pop culture reaction to hearing cult is like some bumbling moron with a knife in a cloak, you know, moseying around in a field.
Ghostface.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Trying to talk to the cows about scary movies. I don't know, dude. I've stood next to a cow. I don't know if I could knock a cow down to cut on it, you know?
No.
So, like, we're talking groups of people, maybe, to corner it?
Yeah. Well, jumping back to what they were saying, they were finding levels of that stuff that's being used in tranquilizers. Mm-hmm. And most of those cows in that area had the same...
Yeah,
in the New Mexico area.
Yeah. But here's the other thing. Those tests cost money to run, you know? And
right.
So these people are already out the money of their cattle. And so now it's just like, if somebody would foot the bill, like, tell me what happened here.
Yeah.
But, like, I've already lost $4,000. I can't really pay for...
Yeah. You know, during the daylight, you go out to a herd, like, they see the old truck with the bale of hay on the back.
Of course.
Of course, they all come running.
Sure.
But at night, it's different.
Yeah.
Because they're on alert at night more than they would be during the day. Mm-hmm. And they're not used to seeing people during the night as much as they are during the day. Mm-hmm. And they're on a schedule, basically. Like, I know that's funny to say, but
of course,
but they're used to the sun's coming up. We're probably going to see this truck here in a little bit. In the middle of the night, it's a different situation. Now, not saying that it's not possible to come up on cows.
Yeah, of course.
You know, in the middle of the night. But you have to be close enough to them to tranquilize them. Yeah. And I think that'd be a little difficult in the night. Yeah. But who's to say this is all happening in the night anyways? Sure. So I thought it was interesting. There was this woman that was a forensic scientist in one of these documentaries, and she tested that theory about somebody walking up and tranquilizing a cow. So she went out with one of the ranchers in the middle of the night to one of his herd, and they pulled up. They began to walk out into the middle of the field where the herd was standing, and they didn't even make it within 30 feet, and the herd started taking off running. I don't know the actual, range of a tranquilizer gun. Sure. But it can't be that far. I think they would have to be pretty close on an animal like a cow or a buffalo with the thickness of their hides. Yeah. So...
And also, you hit it with the tranquilizer dart, and then it just drops right there. No, it wanders around and then probably thrashes for a little bit. I've never seen one of these sites in real life. I have never talked to anyone who has first-hand accounts of walking up on one of these. But in all of these stories, it talks about coming up on, well, here's a dead calf or a dead cow, whatever it is, sheep, etc. And it's just laying on the ground. The grass around it is not disturbed like you would expect to find if it were attacked or anything like that. There's no evidence of a struggle, and the critter usually has no blood left in it. Where did it go? Not only that, predators tend to not come... This has been several years ago, but I was at an event outdoors. There were cattle being run on it, not beef cattle or anything like that. It was just cattle were around. And when a cow dies, sometimes you just dump it.
They usually haul them off to into a corner of a field, or into a valley.
The valley is what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Like
so some ditch on the property, it's like that's where you throw the dead stuff. And eventually they melt into the ground. But what's interesting about doing things like that is you'll find random bones scattered all over the place because predators get in there and haul those things out, you know. So you'll just see, it's like the cow just lays down and dies, or you throw a dead cow in that ditch and then it just sits there forever and you have the complete skeleton. You expect it to scatter because that's what it does. Critters haul it off. But in these situations, even if the cow has been dead for a while, it's just sitting there. The predators are not fiddling with it.
Yeah.
In some of these reports, it talks about evidence of coyotes around a perimeter. Like, they notice and they're coming up to it, but they don't get any closer. So that kind of goes into, well, is it a tranquilizing chemical? They can smell.
Yeah, that's known across several species of predators, is that they know sometimes when something's up and they're not going to touch it. So you can't rule that out. But in some of these cases, it's really strange.
Yeah. So we've talked about these things from the 70s. Let me give you some more recent ones. So Missouri, July 30th, 2013. A Missouri rancher is getting tired of making disturbing discoveries on her Henry County land. She said she is out of reasonable explanations and now thinks aliens could be to blame for killing her livestock. This woman says she's normally a private person, but the deaths of 3 of her cattle have her speaking out. It's just something I want answers to. This woman's name is Mitchell. This is on Oklahoma's KFOR website, Henry County, Missouri. Mitchell says she found her first cow in December 2011. She had obviously been cut on the side of her jaw. Her tongue was gone, her ear was gone. She assumed the animal had fallen victim to teenagers or was part of a sacrificial ritual, which, if I find a dead animal, I don't know the first thing I'm going to think of is Satanists, you know?
No.
Anyway. Mitchell made the next discovery on July 9th. The rancher says there were char marks around where the cattle had been lying. I looked first to see her tongue was gone, then immediately noticed the udder had been completely removed. So this is something you brought up. Around some of these, like the grass around them has died.
Yep. So all the vegetation, and in most cases, is in a circle formation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty good radius.
Yeah.
Around the carcass.
It's not like a chalk outline. It is like a big spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that also is on the outer edge of where the vegetation meets the dead vegetation have been singed and char marked. But then in one case that I was watching, which was really interesting, is that when the animal died, there was snow on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And around the animal in a big circle formation, the snow had melted, but then refroze under the animal.
Mm-hmm.
But some could say that, you know, animals do let off body heat.
Sure.
And then, you know, if they die, then these gases are being released. Heat is being released.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny from both sides and how close they are. I think it really, there's like this gray line between both of them that it's just like one of them can come at you and be like, yeah, well, I mean, what are you going to say about the singed vegetation around the thing? And then they're going to come back at you with something, and it is logical. So
of course, yeah.
But it's
the thing is,
it's interesting in these cases.
Yeah.
So it's
we don't know.
Right.
You and I don't know.
Yeah, no.
The FBI in the 70s didn't know.
No, we're just going, their theories.
Yeah. This article, 2019, another article I found on KFOR.com, ranchers on edge after cow found mutilated in Oklahoma pasture. January 28th, 2019. This was in Fletcher, Oklahoma. Some ranchers in Comanche County have gone to their pastures only to find some of their cows have been killed and mutilated. A pregnant cow had been killed. At this point, they don't have any suspects and relying on the community to report suspicious behavior. As for the victim, she has a message for the vicious trespasser. Quote, better hide your ass. Don't let me know who did it.
Welcome to Oklahoma, folks.
Stradley said the person responsible could be arrested and charged with cruelty to animals. If you have information, reach out to the Comanche County Sheriff's Office.
It's that damn blood moon.
It's the blood moon. Yeah.
It's the blood moon.
All right. And this was on southwestledger.news. Calf mutilations puzzle concern police, citizens. This is a small community along Lake Ellsworth in northern Comanche County. This is October 11th, 2020. These are 2 calves They were barely a full day old, and they were mutilated by unknown subjects in a grazing field. I think there is a video you can watch of this guy, because he went around in the small town and put up a reward. He took pictures and was like, "Tell me who did this." The reward poster notes, the heart, tongue, testicles, and penis were cut out and removed from the animals. He also said that it looked like the bottom of one of the hooves on one of the animals looked like it went through a cheese grater. There was no evidence of any blood, save for a tiny amount on a nearby rock. No evidence of wild animal attacks or scavengers, which would rip and tear the flesh. The body parts were removed in a surgical manner. This article references a book called Stalking the Herd. It's by a fella named Christopher O'Brien. He references these Alabama cases from the 1990s and says that the same things are always taken. Bovine jaws are stripped to the bone, reproductive organs are removed, digestive tracts and rectums are cored out, and there is little to no blood at the scene. In the bovine blood, O'Brien writes, pharmaceuticals, not veterinary drugs, have been found, including anticoagulants. So it's like they are draining the blood. They, whatever it, they, us, is. What else we got here? May 3rd, 2023, there's Madison County, Texas. The Animal Legal Defense Fund set up a $5,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or people responsible for killing and mutilating 6 cows in 3 Texas counties. 6-year-old longhorn, tongue completely removed by a straight, clean cut with apparent precision. Scavenging animals did not touch the cow's body, and so it decayed for several weeks before its discovery. 6 cows are victims of these crimes, said Animal Defense League. And then Lubbock Avalanche Journal, April 23rd, 2023. This is what I believe that legal defense was set up. Southeast Central Texas Highway, several dead cows with select body parts missing. No signs of struggle, no sign of tracks. Deceased animal was undisturbed. So what got me more interested in cattle mutilation, and you've heard me mention this before, I went out to Roswell to hang out with some friends and went to a UFO fest, and I got to listen to Chuck Zukowski. He did a presentation on animal mutilation. He gave a little bit of history. It was kind of kicked off because of a horse. It was named Snippy, something like that, and it was the first mutilation case to really make the pop culture scene, and then they were off to the races. But listening to him speak, it was the first time where I heard this. Something comes in, picks these things up, takes them away, takes what they want from them, including draining the blood, and then brings it back and drops it. Like, not even placing it, just drops it. And he's been out and personally investigated these things, and he shot pictures and things like that, and he finds that there's a lot of broken bones on the side that's on the ground. And he said, like, that report in the 70s where it was talking about having been dropped or bounced, that is Chuck's theory, is that they are dropped. And some of them, he says, it's not even that they are dropped, it's like they are pressed. Like what you were talking about with that snow that is melted around it. Like there is a blast of heat, and then it flash freezes back. And you can see these on History Channel documentaries and stuff like that, you know. Like, you sent me that link that had those guys with the Geiger counters out there. Mm-hmm. And, like, these are mutilation sites where nobody's been out there for years. But you come back and it's like, well, clearly that's the skeleton of a cow. Like, things still aren't messing with it. Yeah. And they put their Geiger counter down there, and they're getting consistent readings of radiation. And, of course, a lot of places around here, there is ambient radiation. Yeah. But it's typically higher at these sites. Yeah. And so, well, what does that mean? We don't know. Yeah. It's just interesting.
Yeah, that's what it really intrigued me, because they did soil samples right at the body, or where the bones at this point. And this was in Colorado, what I was watching. But it would be significantly higher than the soil samples they were taking outside of a certain radius of the body.
There's a clear difference.
And then they would also take samples from further out in the field. It was always higher in that vicinity. And then they would also take readings off the bones themselves. It was hard for me to watch a bunch of this stuff, not because of the graphic and I was crying because of the cows. Oh. But I do feel bad for them.
Of course, yeah.
Man, they've been dealt a shitty hand.
They don't really have a choice.
Yeah. It was hard for me because the skeptic in me was really siding with predators, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to look at it from both directions. But when I came across the radiation thing, that was very interesting to me. The singed vegetation, that's interesting. There's small things about this, little details that are common in all of them, and then it's just like, wow. But from the predator theory, yes, predators go after the softest points on a body.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that goes against the other theory because those are soft tissued organs that are being taken.
Yeah.
And so I can see why people are like, yeah, it's predators. They do that. You know,
well, in that report where it talks about the scrotum had been removed, and from that hole that was made, the intestines had been pulled out, and the intestines were undisturbed. You can watch nature documentaries and see this. Like, when the predator takes down a live animal, it's going for the belly. Because it's soft there, and that's where the good stuff is, you know.
And I'm not saying either way.
Of course.
But I think it's interesting to at least touch on why some of the stuff we do know in predator cases. And then also, you know, not to get graphic, but like what you're saying, the rectal. See, now being removed, the inside being removed, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But if you take a cow and it dies, most of them bloat.
Of course.
And if it bloats because of these gases being released.
Oh, and that's any
and then
living
you
thing.
have a natural hole on a body, it's going to stretch. And then when it stretches, it's going to pull, and it's going to look like a precision, but it's just because the skin's being pulled back.
Yeah, the skin is pulled so tight. It's a balloon that's about to burst.
And then some animals, they pull. So they get their teeth on it, and then they pull. So it's not like you're going to see cartoon teeth marks out of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So I can see how sometimes the precision can be misinterpreted. Yeah. And playing off of that, I did watch a cosmetic surgeon do a test. He took the hide of a cow and he used stuff that's available now.
Yeah.
And he started with the scalpel. He was going off a picture of a suspected cow mutilation case. He was trying to recreate that circle out of the hide. And when he did that with the scalpel, he had a lot of trouble getting through the hide, and he had to two-hand it to get this done. When you look at it in comparison to the picture, it wasn't as precise, but it was close.
Yeah.
And then he took lasers that are available for use. And he did use a laser to cut out a circle, and the laser didn't look anything like what was in the picture. After he did several techniques, the picture he was going off of, they had zoomed in on it, and it looked like a knife or some kind of blade because it was rigid and it went at an angle. So the cosmetic surgeon was saying that since it looked like something was at an angle, it was closer to a scalpel than the laser. But in some cases that we've read, like there's singed hair around the circle.
Yeah.
And that forensic scientist that I was talking about earlier, what I thought was really cool that she did, she was on the case of a buffalo investigating, and she took samples of the hair around the edge of the incisions. Then she put them under a microscope, and all of the hair follicles were blown out. And that, she said, is very common to singe. What she was saying, the evidence that she was finding, is that it looked like whatever had made the incision had burned.
Was hot.
Yeah, or hot. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. There ain't no coyote out there. Well, he must have some hot breath or something.
Right.
I don't know. Or we have dragons hanging out somewhere.
Chupacabra, maybe.
Yeah.
Fire breathing.
So some of the stuff was really interesting that they were going into, and the evidence was there that they were showing. But what is it? We don't know.
Yeah.
They're not saying that they know. They're just going off what we know.
What does the evidence say? Like, well, we don't have a lot of evidence, but here's what it suggests so far.
Yeah, this is kind of what we have. The eye being taken out, birds go for eyes.
Of course.
And birds can peck out eyes without even damaging any of the socket or the skin around the eye.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned bloating, and if the skin's real tight, you know, like it's a balloon about to break and a bird comes up and pecks it just right, then where they peck may blow a a circle.
Well, like a balloon.
Yeah,
you
of course.
You just poke it with a needle and then it...
Yeah.
So.
But that's fluid and gas and all that other stuff that would then be pouring out into the surrounding vegetation. And maybe that's why the surrounding vegetation died, because it's soaked through with blood, but then there's no evidence of that. But
and then elements can... The blood thing is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And a lot of blood that should be evident.
Yep.
Something should be there. So that's very interesting that it's not there.
Yep.
Then, what was really interesting in the blood theory, there was a case, the guy had a white calf, and the white calf had no blood on the fur. And there should be pink to the fur somewhere or something, and this cow was straight white with no evidence of blood.
Yeah.
And so that, if that's what was laying in front of me and had not been touched, and I know it hadn't been touched, then you're telling me it's a coyote. No, I call bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that there's not a mess. And then in most of those cases that you're reading, if they had a reading for tracking, there was no tracks.
Yeah.
Like, now some of the far-fetched stuff that I did run across on tracks, the theory of the tracks being around bodies, was that some of them found footpad tracks around the circle, and you could really tell that they were trying to push the saucer coming down and landing. So, you know, but hey, maybe, what do I know, man? What do I know?
Yeah.
But
there is a book. Let me search this guy right quick. Stanley Milford Jr. He and this other fella were known as the Paranormal Rangers. They would go investigate these paranormal things. And in Stanley Milford Jr.'s book, he talks about the first livestock mutilation thing that he came across. He was sent out to investigate this, and this was a family on the reservation, and they had sheep for livestock. And there was something like 30 sheep had just been cut open from groin to mouth. And it happened overnight. The family was sleeping right next to the pen. Like, everything, it was close there. They were put in for the night.
Imagine they had sheepdogs.
They had sheepdogs, and they were not in the pen, and they did not come back to the pen.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Ranger Milford talks about never being able to forget the smell, because it wasn't just, you know, something dead. It was something else that was about that as well. And, of course, when you get into indigenous stories about that, a lot of it is witchcraft. It's blamed on witchcraft, things like that.
You know, touching back on, like, the satanic panic and the cults being a theory.
Yeah.
I would think that, and maybe it's just because I've watched too many movies.
Of course.
Because, of course, I'm not sitting at my home studying cults and stuff.
Right.
I would think that if they were going to sacrifice a cow or an animal of sorts, you would think they would chop the head off.
Of course.
Or, you know, I just don't see somebody sitting in the middle of a field with the risk of getting caught. And it's going to take a while to take what they were taking.
Yeah.
So it's not, so they'd have to be out there for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't see anybody that's committing an act of, you know, crime.
Sure.
They want to be in and out.
What value does the tongue have for any ritual, you know, or a goat's scrotum and testicles, or
are
they making hacky sacks out of that stuff? Like, what are we doing, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of makes me think, this has been years ago, but there was some graffiti that had ended up on some public places here in the neighborhood. There was like blue and purple spray paint, and they had painted the words boobs, and then they'd drawn like a penis, you know?
Boob and penis.
Yeah, and it's like, guys, you decided you're going to do this. This is your artistic expression viewable to the entire world, and you came out here and wrote boobs and drew a penis. Way to go, guys.
I don't know, Tyler. Maybe they're just trying to commission themselves for a Playboy article or something.
Oh, maybe so, yeah. They were looking for their big UFO article break for Playboy. Yeah. And so I just kind of think that same mindset. You got your cultists in their nice robes and their fancy knives, and they're going out there and
they don't want to get nasty.
They take the trouble to select a cow. They get this cow down, and then they only take testicles, rectum, tongue, and an eye. Like, you had the whole cow, guys. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but
dude,
you could make some cool jewelry out of some bones.
Yeah.
You can make wind chimes. I've seen lots of cool stuff you can do with cow bones.
I'm kind of a ribeye guy myself.
There you go.
I don't know, man.
I don't either.
know.
I think that's the thing. It doesn't make logical, if you can apply logic to this, it doesn't make rational sense, you know?
I just had a thought. Tyler, you want to hear my theory?
I do. I want to hear your theory.
Alien predators.
Okay.
Okay, so you might say, okay, so aliens
Sure.
coming from UFOs or something. No.
Uh-huh.
Alien coyotes.
Okay. I'm there, dude.
You know, I'm not too far off.
Uh-huh.
Because there was also stuff I ran across where skinwalkers
Yeah.
were
We'll talk about
a
skinwalkers.
reason.
So the reason I started off this whole thing with Charles Fort's thing about vampires is because these things are drained of blood.
Yeah.
We talk about the chupacabra, the goat sucker, his...
It sounds so bad.
It does. But well, I think that's what chupacabra means, goat sucker.
Yeah,
Literally.
you're right. It is.
But anyway, like, these goats are being found drained of blood. And so some critter doing that, you know. So this folklore, this history, this stuff is that the basis for our vampire legends and things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe. I could see that. But the point is, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about cattle mutilations. And they're like, oh yeah, that was real big in the 70s. Well, it was happening before that then. And it's still happening today.
Yeah.
I was trying to talk to my dad about this because I was thinking back, how often did my grandfather check on his cattle? And it was every day. That's just what he did. I asked my dad, I was like, have you heard anything like that? And he's like, well, who would say anything about that? Like,
right.
Because, yeah, of course, small town America, you don't want to open yourself up for ridicule. But then again, the History Channel might come in and film you and take some dudes out there, and it might be a good time for a little bit. But I could totally also see somebody doing that and being like, you know what? I made this whole thing up. Please stop paying attention to me. This is real weird.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, and this is just my opinion, but I would think living in Oklahoma, we are kind of in cow country.
Yeah. The whole state is pretty rural.
We all deal with farmers and ranchers. In my opinion, I think if they did run across something like wasn't an obvious predator kill, I think other than predators being their first reaction or that the cow was sick, you know, I don't think they would automatically just go to aliens. I think,
of course.
I think they would naturally go to who did this, like who's coming out killing my cow. And I think the reason they would bring it up would be more of this has to stop because this is my livelihood.
Of course.
This is my property and you're damaging it.
Right.
And I think they're thinking more logical than most, not everybody. So, you know, when someone says it's probably a cult or something, well, you know, that can happen.
Of course,
so
anything's possible.
You know, I even heard a theory. This one was kind of a weird one, that it was a possible future serial killer practicing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, we must have a shitload of serial killers.
Yeah.
Or there's a handbook out there that is passed around.
Yeah.
And we gotta get that handbook so we can stop these guys.
You bring up time travel. I don't know if we've talked about that before on the podcast, but like when I watch Ancient Aliens, I love that show. But these people are just so convinced it's aliens. It's like, dude, that could be us traveling back to fiddle with something, you know?
Yeah.
When I say us, I mean humans in the future or whatever, you know?
I think in anything, whether it be politics or UFO studying or Bigfoot studying or anything, I think you're always going to have the radical end.
Oh, of course.
And so I think you're always going to have that. And then it's unfortunate because sometimes it's okay to think, you know, ghost hunters do this all the time. Well, they say they do, but they want to debunk what they're experiencing. That way, if they can't debunk it, then it must be. And that could be the same with other things as well.
Yeah.
I think that it's okay to be a little hesitant of just jumping right in and saying, yeah, a UFO came and took my cow.
Yeah.
I think it's good to sit back and go, well, you know, a cow does bloat.
Yeah.
And holes do stretch.
Yeah.
So
at the same time, if you're talking to somebody whose livestock was mutilated a year ago, you know, like, he's had this question before. You know, what happened to your cow? Aliens took it. You know, aliens mutilated it. It's like, he's been thinking about that for a long time. And, like, this now has become the most rational thing he can think of because nothing else makes sense. And
yeah, when you start,
that's wild too, you know.
Yeah, well, that's why I said, like, when you brought this up, and I was like, oh no, I don't know too much about this, and then I started getting into it, and like I said, I was really hesitant. My natural response would be predators.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like natural reasons. Mm-hmm. But then you start thinking, man, like, that's weird. How do you explain the radiation? Those are weird theories. It became very interesting to me, and I didn't think it would, but it has.
Yeah. So these people are like, well, the predators didn't mess with that. It just kind of melted into the ground.
Yeah.
If you live where we do, if you're on the local highways, you're going to see deer and other things that have been hit on the side of the road.
Yeah.
You know.
We see it all the time.
All the time. And, you know, you can see those deer in various stages of bloat and things like that. But it's pretty clear, like, there is trauma on that deer. Like, things are broken, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like perfectly cut circles. It is like, this is an impact. This thing was hit, and now it is sitting there. But then it's one of those things, too, where those will melt into the ground. But often they're in the median, in between the two highways.
Yeah.
You know? And then it's
and
like,
so
you got cars running back and forth.
Cars, so animals are going to be more, scavengers and stuff are going to be a little more hesitant to
I would think
feed
so.
on that carcass, unless they're birds. Birds don't give a shit.
Birds, of course.
Birds aren't real. Anyways, but yeah, so there's all kinds of things. You remember when you first started talking about this? I don't know if you remember me asking you, why is it always cows?
It's not always cows.
And then it was like, well, you know, there's horses and there's buffalo and there's sheep. And I'm like,
goats.
Yeah, but why is it always livestock?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why isn't it like deer? Why aren't there wild animals that... But then, like you said, because that's just my, you know, me asking and then not thinking. And your response was, well, you know, why would we be looking for deer out in the forest? You know,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not an animal that you're checking.
And that's the thing. This is livestock. This is someone's career. This is their product.
And they're checking it. And I mean, it's, you know, they're gonna know.
Yeah.
You know,
so it could very well be happening to deer.
Yeah.
It's just we're not looking for that.
Yep.
You know. And, I mean, I guess it's okay to apply for a government grant to try to get $50,000 to investigate deer mutilations that could potentially be happening in the surrounding area.
Yeah.
But I think that would be unlikely. What government interest would there be? There are some documentaries on Netflix that just came out recently. George Knapp, he's an American journalist. He has been looking into UFO-related stuff and working real hard toward disclosure and stuff like that for aliens. His most recent documentary on Netflix is all over the place, but it's a good time. You should totally watch it. But the cattle mutilation thing in that episode, he spends the first half of second or third episode, I think, talking to these ranchers with these incidents. And he goes out and he's able to see some of these remains still out there. And there are pictures. And there is this story from this guy, and I can't remember where he is, but he's talking about seeing a UFO in his pasture. And his wife sees it too. And it's like, not the pasture away from his house, but like the pasture he sees when he looks out his front door, you know. And so he goes in and grabs his gun. And when he gets it in his sight, it's gone. Not that it takes off, not that anything happens, it just goes away. That's interesting.
Kind of like a hologram.
Mm-hmm. Or did it zip back to the dimension it came from?
Oh, yeah. Sucked right back through the portal.
Yeah. Wormhole, whatever else.
Yep.
There are these stories I've heard. You brought up skinwalkers. And I want to say it was the late 70s. I'm having a hard time finding this stuff. And I think it's just that my research on the internet just isn't so good anymore. But anyway, supposedly there was a UFO that touched down just outside of this area, and there were witnesses who reported it hover in this pasture, and then something came out of the ship, we'll call it object or whatever, came out from the bottom and then took off running through the pasture. Something. Was it a chupacabra? Was it a skinwalker? What could it have been? Literally anything at this point.
Probably a naked cow.
Could have been a cow. Yeah.
That was hell of a ride.
That was one that survived. And then, going back to cattle being taken, these parts, blood being drained. And I don't know if I heard it during the fella's seminar about mutilation, but there are these stories about some abductees coming back and reporting that what they experienced on the ship around them were like these giant vats of what they described as blood and parts just all over that ship. And so what is it about blood that they would be collecting?
I don't know, man.
And I can't find those stories either, but I've heard those stories.
All I'm seeing when we're talking about this is the killer clowns.
Yeah.
They just wrap them cows up in cotton candy, throw a straw in them. That's why they're all drained.
Yeah. Arachnophobia starts that way, kind of, right? Like,
is that really? Yeah.
It's
been so long since I've seen that, but
I think it starts with this body sent back to America, and when it arrives, it has been completely drained, and that's how the spider survived the trip back. So
yeah,
it's a bunch of spiders out there, man.
Yeah. It could be anything.
Bamfing in and out.
This just popped in my head, and I meant to mention this earlier.
Yeah.
A natural reason for the singe in the vegetation, and this is an interesting theory as well. It's not my theory. Lightning. Cows could be struck by lightning, and then it could melt the ground around them. It could do, because it travels through, and it does some weird stuff.
It does.
So,
Electricity is weird.
You can't rule out lightning either.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily recommend you do this, but if you search for cattle mutilation photos on the internet, like, you will find some that's like, this is clearly like, and I'm not an expert, but it's like, oh, that's predator, that's natural. But then you look at this other stuff and you're like, that's pretty weird. And then there's this one picture, and it looks like it's kind of on a hill, and there are trees all around, and there's like this little stream or something, and there are like 8 cows just among these trees, just dead. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, that's a lightning strike.
Yeah.
It's like, that is a high place. That is a place with lots of moisture in the ground and tall trees. Like, those cows are dead. They were electrocuted. Just what it looks like from the picture, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm not one of those to be like, dang, they had a great pick out of those 6 cows when they needed those 6 tongues.
Yeah.
Like, no, that was just lightning.
Yeah. You know, there was another thing when I was having that discussion with the friend that I was talking about. He brought up when they fertilize these fields and they use those chemicals, you could have an accident situation where, like, something fails or they spill a bunch of it in one area, in a concentrated area. And then you have a cow that comes across later on and is just like, this grass looks good. Nom, nom, nom. Ugh.
Yeah. And, you know, the way they consume that stuff, it's not like they're just going to pass that through. Like, they're going to work on that.
Yeah.
It's going to compartmentalize out, and it's going to hang out in their system for quite some time.
Interesting stuff.
Interesting. So, yeah, maybe it's aliens.
Maybe it's Satanists.
Maybe it's Satanists. They are, man, well-funded Satanists.
Yeah.
Chupacabras.
Chupacabras.
Vampires.
I don't think Bigfoot's out there with a crossbow, but
maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the my favorite version of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever, is Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes. Yeah. Love that movie.
You know, he walks into the house and he sees that deer head and he's like petting it, and then he's like shoves his hand through the wall to try to find the rest and realizes it's just a head. Like,
just head. Yeah.
Picture Sasquatch as a lover of nature, you know?
Yeah.
If you would like to talk about how Sasquatch is not a lover of nature, we'd like to hear from you. Send us an email.
Yeah, if you have any Sasquatch abuse stories. Man.
If you're local in the area and want to tell us your story of finding cattle mutilation, we'd love to hear about it. Any of your strange memories or things like that you've maybe seen, reach out to us. Yeah. For reasons, we're not going to be posting any actual pictures of cattle mutilation on our Instagram feed. We don't want to get flagged. Yeah. But we'll have some goofy stuff, more of the pop culture stuff for you out there to enjoy if you wanted to check out our Instagram for this episode. Is there anything else we need to talk about with cattle mutilation?
I don't think we threw all of our theories out there.
I think you're right.
Theories from other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, man.
It's been baffling people for a long time. I do want to mention that that story about the airship lassoing the calf.
Yeah.
That was from 1897, I think. It got back into popular culture with one of Jacques Vallée's books. Can't remember which book that was, but he kind of brought it back to UFO pop culture stuff in the early to mid 60s. So
well, everybody knows I love the 1800s, and it's my favorite. But I love when they take, like, that story really intrigued me.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you don't think that stuff goes that far back.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the 70s, the most common era that all this stuff's happening, this strange stuff.
Yep.
But then you hear the story of back in the 1800s, and the perspective is different when the story is told and how stuff is described. And it's interesting to me. But there's this movie that I want to see, and I haven't run across it, and I don't remember what it's called, but it's basically the War of the Worlds, but it's in the Victorian age.
Okay.
And so I thought, man, stuff like that, it's cowboys versus aliens. Like, it's just, and I know that's goofy, and some of this stuff, but hey, I mean,
So this is the second time you're bringing up cowboys and aliens, and I'm not. How long's that movie's been out for? More than a decade. So
but that movie was off of. That's a remake, right?
It's a graphic. It was based on a graphic novel.
Oh, graphic novel. Okay. Yeah.
So based on a graphic novel, which I haven't read, movie stars Daniel Craig, Harrison Ford's in it. It's at least a decade old.
Yeah.
I've got the internet. Let's find out. Let's do our listeners the service.
Sometimes the internet's broke.
Yeah.
This coffee was good, by the way.
2011. Directed
coffee?
by no Cowboys and Aliens. 2011.
I was so close. What'd I say?
Yep. John Favreau's the director. Based on a graphic novel. And it's interesting because if you look into indigenous mythology about the Thunderbird, like there are little hints in there in that movie where you can be like, one of the big things in the movie is these machines come in and they've got these searchlights on them, but when they find the person, they shoot out this net or whatever, and it like paralyzes them, but also drags them up to this machine and they fly off, And I can't remember what they're doing with the people, but eventually when they find the people, they've got these, whatever they hit them with initially, this little wire vest thing, and then they're distracted by this light that just hovers near the ceiling, and all these people are just standing there looking at this light. But then there's when Daniel Craig's character has his flashback or memories or whatever, and how beautiful and bright everything is. And then there's the hummingbird that comes in, and I love hummingbirds, and there's mythology about the hummingbirds. They're the water bringers, they're messengers of the gods, things like that. And that I think that hummingbird in that specific scene represents his deceased spouse or girlfriend or whoever else. But still, it's one of those neat little, there's something else going on here as well. That movie's so cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's a cool concept.
And I think it starts with cattle mutilation. Yeah, there's something happened where I think 2 cow hands.
Dude, I'm telling you, you need to see Nope.
Okay. All right.
Because it's not cattle.
Yeah.
It's horse. It's a horse ranch. I think I'm going to stick to the advice I always give. If you find yourself being abducted, go with the flow.
Yeah. And then come talk to us. Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're going to bring you back.
Maybe.
Hell, you might get a gift bag out of it.
Maybe, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Be the one person that doesn't freak out.
Yep.
You know?
So there are those people that come back that end up not freaking out, but we treat them crazy too. So,
yeah.
You know.
You know, when your dog starts humping your leg, just let him finish.
Just let him finish.
Yeah, but, you know, same concept, you know? Just let them, do their thing.
Yeah. When are you going to have that experience again? You just never know.
Yeah. There has to be some antique collecting aliens.
Of course.
And I would love to see their collections.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, through all the nonsense that I gave and the awesome research and facts that you've given.
That was all your research. I just read your research.
We went through that smoke pretty good this time.
I think so.
Yeah.
Starting to clear out a little bit. We can come back to reality.
Yeah.
How's your cigar?
Well, the smoke's still going right now. This cigar was amazing.
Yeah. You've about smoked it all the way down.
I haven't had it in a while, and so you know what's funny is the last episode we recorded here.
Mm-hmm.
For some weird reason, I had a craving for one of these because it was taking me back to us sitting in the garage.
Yeah.
The first time I smoked a cigar in my
general,
life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so when I went home that night, I actually ordered 5 of these. and so anyways, yeah. So I've been like, ooh, it's so good.
Of course, Black Friday was recently. So there were a lot of ads and things like that. And I got several new tobacco blends to try. So,
well, I appreciate you not
sharing those with you.
tempting me with text messages.
No,
because I actually, believe it or not, have not purchased anything throughout that little Black Friday, cyber, whatever
Monday,
situation.
Yeah.
I was actually proud of myself. I was like, I can do this.
Way to go.
Yeah.
It's not just rampant consumerism that fuels us. There are other things that we care about.
Yep. So...
All right, dude, are we wrapping it up?
I think so.
All right.
Good times.
Keep an eye on your livestock out there, folks.
Yeah. I still have the question, though. The question's still there. Why the cows, man?
Yeah.
Give them a break, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I know you've gotten some horses here and there.
Yeah.
You've gotten some buffalo, you know. There's not a lot of buffalo in North America.
Yeah.
Per se.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's, you know, some. But,
bison.
But, you know, maybe that's why they're laying off of them. But, I mean.
They respect
like,
endangered.
Dude, like, I mean, I know everybody likes a good steak every once in a while. But,
yeah.
dude, you're taking the wrong parts.
Yeah, the wrong parts.
There's so many parts you would be amazed by.
We'll show you how to cook a good steak.
In reality, all you're doing up there is making hot dogs. I don't, you know, beef hot dogs is all you're making. So,
all right, well, play us out.
Play us out.
Out on the prairie, where the grass grows tall, there's a shadow in the moonlight that no one saw. Farmer Joe swearing, I locked the gate tight, but come morning, there's a cow missing under starlight. No tracks, no struggle, just a clean-cut scene, and the sheriff shaking his head at what it could mean. Some say it's coyotes, some blame the skies, but the truth is buried where the cow now lies. Cowspiracy theories, they're flying high, laser beams and spaceships cutting through the sky. Secret labs, government spires, who's got a beef with these bovine lives? Cowspiracy theories, oh, don't you see? Something strange is haunting the cattle industry. The preacher says it's demons, the skeptic says nope, it's just a bunch of pranksters with a butcher's rope. But tell me why the organs are gone so clean, like they vanished in a way no doctor's seen. Then there's Betty down the road who swears she saw a light hovering over the barn in the dead of night. And old Hank's talking about a government van parked by the field with their top secret plan. Cowspiracy theories, they're out of control. Are the answers in the stars or down in a hole? Crop circles, black helicopters. of coffee or maybe a stiff drink. Maybe it's the aliens prepping a feast, or a cult worshiping some madman beast. Are we test subjects in their master plot, or is it something more twisted we haven't thought? Cowspiracy theories, they're moot-defying. Every explanation leaves us mystified. The rancher's fed up, the cows look stressed, and the truth is as elusive as a UFO nest. Yeah, so next time you hear a strange hum in the night and your cattle are acting like something ain't right, keep one eye on the herd and one on the sky, 'cause the cowspiracy theories will never die.